Joe Burrow just made his preseason debut, and Bengals players have a lot to say about it. Burrow took 2 big hits in just 13 snaps, and some of the reactions are raising serious questions about whether Cincinnati has actually fixed its biggest problem. Let's get into it. Thursday night, August 13th, Paycor Stadium. The Bengals opened their preseason against the Detroit Lions, and Zac Taylor had already told everyone this was coming. Burrow, Yamar, Chase, T. Higgins, the big names were all going to play, just not for long. It won't be a ton of time, but for our fans to come out there, they're going to see Joe, J-Mar, and T. So the fans showed up, and for 4 plays, it looked fine. The Bengals started at their own 26, Chase Brown picked up 5 yards on the ground, and then Burrow hit Chase on a play-action shot for 16 yards over the middle. Building, moving. Then it fell apart. Burrow was sacked for a 9-yard loss by Detroit Lions edge defender Ahmed Hassanayan during the Bengals' opening possession at Paycor Stadium, helping stall a 4-play drive that ended with a punt. Hassanayan is a second-year pass rusher, not exactly a household name, but he beat Cincinnati's protection clean, and the internet noticed immediately. Ari Meirov posted the clip and it exploded. By the next morning, it had racked up nearly 3 million views. The comments came in waves. One fan wrote about Bengals fans watching this unfold in real time. Another account fired off a GIF that needed no caption. And then there was the pushback. A fan pointed out that the rush actually got home 6 seconds before the rush got there. BTW people blaming the O-line, trying to defend the offensive line by blaming Burrow for holding the ball too long. That debate line versus quarterback became the entire storyline of the night. Because this wasn't just any sack, this is the same quarterback, who missed more than half of last season with a turf toe injury serious enough that it kept him out of 8 games. Every hit Burrow takes now gets measured against that memory. So when he went down on the very first series of a meaningless exhibition game, Bengals fans didn't see a routine preseason play. They saw a pattern repeating itself. Zac Taylor had promised continuity this offseason. The same 5 up front, more reps together, an offensive identity built around protecting the guy making franchise-level decisions every Sunday. The play stood out after an offseason centered on continuity and improved protection along Cincinnati's offensive line. And for one drive, it looked like nothing had changed. But Burrow wasn't done. He stayed in for a second series. And on that drive, another rookie made his presence felt. Burrow was planted by Detroit edge rusher Eric O'Neal on 3rd down of the second drive, resulting in an incompletion, with O'Neal, an undrafted rookie from Rutgers, blowing past left tackle Orlando Brown Jr. This wasn't a star pass rusher either. O'Neal had barely any sacks in his entire college career before that snap, and yet he got home too. So now Cincinnati had 2 different defensive linemen from Detroit's backups getting through. In the span of 2 possessions, both times through the same spot, the left tackle position manned by Orlando Brown Jr. That's when the reactions really started pouring in. From fans, from analysts, and yes, from players themselves, because this wasn't a secret happening in a vacuum. Everybody with a phone and an opinion had eyes on it within minutes. By halftime, the framing across sports media had already locked in. Headlines were calling the Bengals' offensive line atrocious. One outlet's write-up captured fans mocking Cincinnati directly, with one commenter cracking that this looked like the same tired story on repeat. Asking outright, "Is this the Bengals starting team? They're so cooked," laughing emojis included. Another user chimed in, claiming the rest of the league wouldn't have any trouble handling this team if the pattern held. And it wasn't just anonymous fans firing off hot takes. Former NFL linebacker Emmanuel Acho, watching the broadcast, reacted in real time and didn't hold back. After watching Burrow take a sack and then get drilled again on the very next series, Acho said flatly that he thought in 2 drives Joe Burrow has taken a sack and a pressure. vs the Lions, second team defense, I think we've seen enough, let's get him out the game. That's a former player, someone who spent years in an NFL locker room publicly calling for the Bengals to protect their quarterback from his own coaching staff's plan. He didn't have to wait long, whether it was Acho's plea or just the original script all along. Taylor pulled Burrow after that second drive, 13 snaps, done for the night. Joe Flacco walked in to finish the job, and that's when the story shifts. Because now it's not just about the sack anymore. It's about what everyone around Burrow, from teammates to his head coach, actually said about it once the pads came off. Here's the thing about a Joe Burrow sack in August. It means almost nothing for the standings and almost everything for the conversation. And once the game ended, with Cincinnati holding on for a 16-14 win, the questions in the locker room weren't about the scoreboard, they were about protection. Burrow himself didn't dodge it. Asked about the hits after the game, he gave one of those lines that sounds calm on paper but says a lot between the words. He shrugged it off as part of the process, telling reporters, "You get your feet wet. That's football," when asked directly about the pressure he took. It's the kind of answer a seventh-year starter gives when he's trying to keep a preseason moment from becoming a preseason narrative. But Burrow also made clear he wasn't fully satisfied with how the offense performed as a whole, saying afterward that what you can do is evaluate the rest of what you get and grow and learn from it. According to comments relayed by the Cincinnati Enquirer's Kelsey Conway, that's Burrow in coach speak mode, measured, forward-looking, not throwing anybody under the bus. But Zach Taylor, when he stood up at the podium, was noticeably less breezy about it. Taylor was asked point-blank about the 2 hits his franchise quarterback absorbed in 13 snaps, and he didn't try to spin it as no big deal. He said plainly, "It's never fun. That's not what we ever want to happen." That's about as close as an NFL head coach gets to admitting out loud in front of cameras that his offensive line has work to do. Taylor went further when talking about the overall operation, saying the team was just trying to function with our offense and be efficient. Obviously, we want to come away with more than 3 points in the 2 drives he was in, but there's going to some positive things and some things we'll work to correct. Translation, the coaching staff saw the same tape everyone else did, and they're not pretending it looked clean. And Taylor didn't stop at commentary, he made a roster decision because of it. He revealed after the game that cornerbacks Jalen Davis and Takario Davis would have played that night. Had it been a real game, being extra cautious? That's a coach openly admitting he's managing this preseason with kid gloves, treating exhibition snaps like live ammunition because of exactly what happened to his quarterback. Now, teammates Orlando Brown Jr., the left tackle who got beaten twice in the same half, didn't hide from what the tape showed either. Multiple outlets covering the game noted plainly that Brown had a really bad-looking rep on the offense's second drive and Burrow got sacked. That's not spin, that's the film. And for a lineman making the kind of money Brown makes to protect the franchise quarterback, bad looking is not a phrase you want attached to your name in the first game of the year. Dexter Lawrence, the new veteran anchoring Cincinnati's defensive line after an off-season trade, offered his own version of a reaction, not about the sack itself, but about what it means to share a locker room with a quarterback who's been pushing everyone since spring. Burrow has spent the off-season talking openly about wanting more urgency across the organization, and that's shaped how his teammates talk about him now. One breakdown of the game noted the mood in the building, quoting Burrow's own guarded but pointed answer. When asked to assess this year's roster, "I don't know, we'll find out. I think it's certainly one of the most talented we've had. That doesn't always equate to production and effectiveness." That's Burrow in his own words, essentially warning his teammates that talent on paper means nothing if execution doesn't show up, which is exactly the lesson that first sack delivered in real time. Jamar Chase, for his part, let his play do the talking, rather than sitting in front of a microphone breaking down the protection issues. He caught the one pass thrown his way for 16 yards on that opening drive, the single bright spot before everything unraveled 2 snaps later. It's part of a pattern with Chase and Burrow. The two have built one of the most dangerous quarterback-receiver connections in the league together, and even in a preseason game, nobody will remember by October. That connection was the one thing that looked automatic. Rookie tight end Jack Endries became an unlikely part of the night's story too. After Burrow exited, Flacco led a long drive that stalled on a lost fumble in the end zone. But the Bengals defense and special teams answered, and eventually Flacco found Endries for a 4-yard score, the game's first touchdown, and a moment that shifted the entire tone of the broadcast, from quarterback getting battered to backups earning their roster spots. That shift matters because it's part of how the locker room processed the whole night, not as one continuous disaster, but as an opening script with one alarming scene in it. So by the time everybody cleared out of Paycor that night, you had 4 completely different reactions layered on top of each other. Burrow calm and clinical, Taylor honest but constructive, Brown exposed on tape and not hiding from it, and a locker room full of guys from Lawrence to Chase to the rookies, all aware that the one moment getting 3 million views online was the sack. Not the 16-yard completion, not the touchdown, not the win. That tension between "it's just preseason and this looks familiar" is exactly where the next part of the story lives. To understand why one sack on a night in August triggered this much noise, you have to go back further than Thursday. This isn't Burrow's first rodeo with an offensive line that can't keep him standing. Burrow was picked first overall back in 2020, and across the years since, the story around him has repeated itself with uncomfortable consistency. Burrow has faced several injuries over the past few seasons, missing a significant portion of games in 2023 and 2025. Wrist surgery, turf toe, different injuries, same root cause showing up again and again, a quarterback getting hit more than a franchise cornerstone should. Last year alone, the toll was brutal. After sustaining a grade 3 turf toe injury in early 2025, Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow missed more than half of the season. When he did play, he was still productive. Burrow threw 17 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in 8 appearances last year, completing 66.8% of his pass attempts, but the sample size tells its own story. 8 games, half a season, gone because of an injury. That started with him taking a hit he shouldn't have had to take. And the frustrating part, the part that fans keep bringing up every single time this conversation resurfaces, is that the talent around Burrow was never the issue. One breakdown of the team's struggles put it bluntly, pointing out that Cincinnati has one of the league's best quarterbacks in Joe Burrow, and arguably the best wide receiver duo in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Yet on offense, Burrow has struggled to stay healthy, behind an offensive line that has struggled since he was drafted. 6 years, same complaint, different season. That history is exactly why calls for his firing started building around Taylor, the head coach, rather than anywhere else. Calls for his firing have mounted since 2024, but Taylor got another chance to lead the team in 2026. When your franchise quarterback keeps hitting the turf and the record keeps sliding, fans start looking for somebody to blame, and the coach sitting across from reporters after every one of these losses becomes the easiest target. The record backs up the frustration. Cincinnati missed the playoffs again last year, finishing with a losing record and watching from home while other teams played January football. The Bengals finished the 2025 NFL campaign with a 6-11 record and missed the postseason, a trend that's continued for Cincinnati lately after being a mainstay in the postseason in the early years of Burrow's career. They've been to a Super Bowl with him, just the one back in his second season, and it ended in a heartbreaker. They made the Super Bowl once in 2021, but were defeated by the Los Angeles Rams 23-20. Everything since has felt like the franchise chasing that same window and never quite getting the protection in place to finish the job. So this offseason was supposed to be different. The front office went out and made moves specifically to shore up the trenches and support Burrow on both sides of the ball. Dexter Lawrence came over in a trade to anchor the interior defensive line. Veterans like Brian Cook, Boy Mayfair, and Jonathan Allen joined the roster too, giving the defense a completely different look heading into the year. The idea was simple. If Cincinnati's defense could carry more weight, Burrow and the passing attack wouldn't have to operate at max aggression on every single drive just to keep pace. And on the offensive side specifically, continuity was the buzzword all summer. Same 5 starters up front, more practice reps together, more comfort in protections. Taylor even brought back the same install from a year ago. Heavier under center work, more play action, trying to make Burrow less of a stationary target by diversifying how the offense actually moves. Even with the Lions deploying their second stringers on defense, it was clear the Bengals wanted to take what they've been practicing in training camp to a game setting, with 2 of Burrow's 4 under-center dropbacks being play-action looks, one resulting in a completion to Jamar Chase over the middle. That's the backdrop, not a single bad night out of nowhere. A continuation of 6 years of the same quarterback getting hit behind the same shaky protection, with a franchise that keeps promising the fix is finally here. Which is exactly why one preseason sack against Detroit's backups in a game that means nothing for the standings still managed to dominate the conversation for days, because Bengals fans have heard we fixed the offensive line before, and they've watched Burrow go down before. The question heading into this season was always going to be whether this year is actually different. And Thursday night gave everybody, players included, their first real look at the answer. Once the emotional reactions died down a little, the actual numbers from the game told a more layered story, one that both sides of the blame the line versus blame Burrow debate could point to. Start with Burrow's actual stat line because it's easy to forget in all the sack talk that he was mostly efficient in his limited window. Burrow did not suffer an injury on the play and completed 5 of 6 passes for 39 yards. That's a strong completion rate for anybody, let alone a quarterback who'd just been drilled to the turf minutes earlier. His only incompletion came when his arm was hit, meaning technically if you strip out the play where a defender's hand literally altered the throw, Burrow was perfect on the night. But context matters here too. The competition wasn't exactly a murderer's row. O'Neal, one of many back-of-the-roster players the Lions used in the game, had just 2.5 sacks in his college career. An undrafted rookie with a modest college resume got home twice against a Bengals front that's supposed to be a strength. That's the detail defenders of the offensive line don't love to hear, and it's the detail critics keep repeating. Zach Taylor's broader point after the game was about function, not perfection, and the team stats back up why he wasn't panicking publicly. Across the whole night, not just Burrow's snaps, Cincinnati generated 256 total yards and averaged only 4.2 yards per pass and 3.1 yards per rushing attempt. Modest, unspectacular, very preseason looking numbers. Nobody in the building was treating this as a finished product. Some analysts pushed back hard on the pile-on happening across social media, pointing to sack rate numbers as the real equalizer in this debate. One fan comparing Flacco's protection to Burrow's noted that Flacco never gets hit behind the same offensive line, with Flacco's sack rate on the Bengals last year sitting at 3.4%, compared to Burrow's 6%, right around the league average of 6%. The implication in that comparison is pointed that Burrow, not just his line, holds some responsibility for extending plays and absorbing more contact than a backup managing the game differently would. Then there's the specific mechanics of the 2 hits, which matter more than the highlight reels let on. The first sack from Hassanine came off a sack attributed to a stunt from Detroit's defensive front, a scheme wrinkle, not simply one blocker getting overpowered. Stunts are notoriously difficult to pick up clean, especially early in a season when protection calls aren't fully calibrated. The second hit was different, straightforward one-on-one, beaten clean off the edge. O'Neal, an undrafted rookie from Rutgers, blew past left tackle Orlando Brown Jr. and hit Burrow just as he was attempting a pass to Drew Sample. One was a scheme problem, the other was a Rep Brown will want back. Beyond the quarterback position, the underlying game gave Bengals fans other things to actually feel good about, which got a little buried under all the sack discourse. Rookie edge rusher Cassius Howell flashed immediately on defense, finishing with a pressure and a fumble recovery in his very first preseason outing. The kind of instant impact showing that gets a locker room buzzing regardless of what happened on the other side of the ball. Landon Robinson, another rookie, got early run in 5 linemen. Looks when Lawrence rotated out and made a couple of plays that stood out on tape. And that defense as a whole is the story evaluators were most encouraged by walking away from the night. New veteran pieces meshing quickly, rookies contributing right away. Exactly the formula the front office had been building toward all off-season. The win itself came down to the margins. Cincinnati escaped with the victory as Cincinnati eventually defeated Detroit 16-14, needing a 56-yard field goal from Evan McPherson to get there. It's the kind of final score that means absolutely nothing for playoff seeding and absolutely everything for team morale 3 weeks before the games start counting. Nobody walks away from a preseason opener feeling like their season is defined. But everybody walks away with a little more information about what still needs fixing. And that's really the split screen this whole week has been about. On one side, Burrow, 5 of 6 passing, a touchdown-free but mistake-free stat line, a receiver core that looked sharp in limited touches. On the other, 2 hits in 13 snaps, an undrafted rookie beating a former All-Pro tackle clean, and a fan base that's watched this exact scene play out too many times to just shrug it off as nothing. Both things are true at once. That's what made the reactions so loud. Nobody was wrong to be encouraged, and nobody was wrong to be worried. So where does all of this leave things heading into the rest of the preseason? The Bengals aren't done evaluating, and neither is Burrow. When reporters asked him directly whether he wanted more snaps as the preseason continues, Burrow didn't shut the door on it. He left it open, signaling that if the staff wants him to log more live reps, to build rhythm with this retooled protection scheme, he's not opposed to it. That matters because it tells you Burrow himself doesn't view Thursday night as some kind of red flag, serious enough to pull him off the field for the rest of August. If anything, his answer suggested the opposite, that he sees value in getting more live snaps against real pressure before the games start to count. Taylor's plan for the next game gives everybody a chance to actually watch this storyline develop, instead of just react to one series. The Bengals are at Paycor Stadium on Saturday, Aug 22, for a second preseason game against the Chicago Bears. That's the next data point. Does Brown clean up his footwork against a completely different pass rush? Does the under-center package that produced a clean 16-yard shot to Chase start showing up more consistently? Or does it keep exposing Burrow to exactly the kind of long-developing dropbacks that gave Detroit's backups their openings? There's also a bigger picture race happening quietly behind the sack conversation. Rookies like Endries, Howell, and Robinson all used this one preseason night to make real cases for a spot on the 53-man roster. Every additional preseason snap between now and cutdown day is as much about who sticks around to help protect Burrow long-term, as it is about how Burrow himself looks in limited action. A tight end who catches touchdowns off Flacco, a defensive lineman who forces fumbles in his debut. Those performances shape depth chart decisions that will directly affect the environment Burrow plays in come week 1. And week 1 itself is already circled on Sep 13. The Bengals will face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 1 of the 2026 regular season. Everything happening right now. Every sack, every completion, every quote from Taylor about functioning the offense is really just preparation for that opening kickoff, when these preseason snaps stop being evaluation and start being consequence. What's clear from everyone who spoke this week, Burrow, Taylor, the players on both sides of the ball, is that nobody in that building is pretending the sack didn't happen. And nobody is pretending it's the whole story either. Burrow walked away from his preseason debut unscathed, completed the vast majority of his throws, connected with his top receiver on the very first shot he took downfield, and made clear he wants more chances to keep building before the real games begin. Taylor walked away from it publicly frustrated about the 2 hits, but encouraged enough by the defense and the young pieces around Burrow to call it a step in the right direction, even while admitting there's correcting to do. The locker room reaction to Joe Burrow's preseason debut wasn't one single voice. It was Burrow shrugging off contact like it's just part of the job. It was Taylor being blunt about what went wrong while defending the bigger plan. It was Orlando Brown getting exposed on tape and not hiding from it. It was rookies stealing headlines away from the veteran story entirely. And it was a fan base watching all of it happen in real time, unable to decide whether to celebrate the win or panic about the quarterback they've built an entire era around. That tension is exactly where the Bengals sit right now. 3 weeks from meaningful football, still trying to prove that this time the protection actually holds.